Have you ever stood before an ancient monument and felt a whisper of something greater, something beyond our understanding? Picture the Luxor Temple under a blanket of stars, its colossal pillars reaching toward the heavens as if trying to touch the cosmos itself. For centuries, this sacred site has captivated explorers, scholars, and dreamers, all drawn by the mystery woven into its very stones. But what if the greatest secret of Luxor isn't etched on its walls or buried in its sands, but hidden deep beneath them? There's a theory, both electrifying and profound, that the brilliant priests of ancient Egypt might have achieved something far beyond grand tombs and towering obelisks. Some researchers and mythologists suggest they constructed a stargate, a portal capable of bridging worlds, defying time, and connecting humanity to realms we've only glimpsed in our boldest dreams. This isn't just science fiction, it's a tantalizing possibility rooted in cryptic hieroglyphs, celestial alignments, and whispers from the edges of archaeology and mythology. Join me as we venture into one of history's most compelling enigmas. Together, we'll explore the clues, the controversies, and the breathtaking vision of a civilization that may have reached for the stars in ways we're only beginning to imagine. This is a journey into the heart of human curiosity, where myth and science intertwine, and where the sands of Egypt may yet reveal truths that rewrite our understanding of the past and our place in the universe. To grasp the possibility of something as extraordinary as a stargate, we must first understand the minds who could have conceived it. At the very heart of ancient Egypt's spiritual and intellectual life stood the priestly class, individuals whose influence and knowledge far surpassed that of simple temple attendants. They were the scholars, the scientists, and the sacred guardians of the civilization's deepest secrets. More than just religious figures, these high priests acted as the chief administrators of cosmic order, known as Maat, and were believed to be the sole mediators between the world of humanity and the realm of the gods. Their authority was absolute within the temple confines, and their word was considered divinely inspired. Their duties extended far beyond leading ceremonies. They were meticulous astronomers, tracking the movements of stars and planets with astonishing accuracy to create precise calendars for agriculture and religious festivals. They were advanced mathematicians and engineers, capable of the complex calculations necessary for aligning monumental structures with celestial bodies. They were also masters of medicine, magic, and what we might now call metaphysics, studying the nature of reality and the soul. This vast, multidisciplinary knowledge was not for public consumption. It was closely guarded, passed down through generations within initiated lineages, and protected from the uninitiated by layers of ritual and secrecy. This exclusive access to advanced understanding positioned them as the only individuals in their society with the capability to even attempt a project of such monumental ambition. The temples they operated from, like the one at Luxor, were not merely houses of worship. They were multidimensional spaces believed to be the literal dwelling places of the gods on earth. The further one traveled into a temple, from the open courtyard to the inner sanctum, the more restricted and sacred the space became. The deepest, most hidden chambers were accessible only to the highest-ranking priests and the pharaoh himself. It is within these secluded, hallowed spaces, far from the public eye, that the most profound rituals were performed and the most potent sacred knowledge was stored. If a project required ultimate secrecy, a level of technological and spiritual understanding beyond the mainstream, and a direct connection to cosmic forces, there is no more plausible location for its conception and construction than the restricted heart of an Egyptian temple under the vigilant watch of its priestly masters. But why Luxor? Of all the sacred sites in ancient Egypt, what made this particular location, known to its builders as Waset and to the Greeks as Thebes, the ideal setting for such a profound undertaking? The answer lies in its unique and powerful sacred geography. For over a millennium, this city was not just a political capital but the spiritual heart of the empire, a place believed to be where the divine and mortal worlds intersected most powerfully. Its very ground was considered holy, charged with a celestial energy that made it the perfect canvas for the priest's most ambitious work. At the core of Luxor's significance was its intimate connection to Amun-Ra, the king of the gods. Amun-Ra was a fusion of two powerful deities, Amun, the hidden, mysterious force of creation, and Ra, the visible, life-giving sun god. This combination represented the totality of existence, both the seen and the unseen, the manifest and the potential. As the primary cult center for this supreme deity, Luxor Temple was more than a monument. It was considered his earthly home, a place where his essence was most strongly present and could be directly communed with. The priests serving here were therefore not just honoring a god, they were acting as custodians for the fundamental creative force of the universe itself. If one were to build a gateway to other realms, operating from the home of the being who governs all realms would be the ultimate strategic advantage. This divine connection was mirrored in the very stones and alignment of the temple complex. The ancient Egyptians were master architects of celestial harmony, and Luxor is a stunning example of this precision. The entire temple is meticulously oriented along an east-west axis, a direct reference to the path of the sun, which was seen as the daily journey of Ra across the sky. This wasn't merely symbolic, it was a functional alignment designed to harness cosmic energy. During specific astronomical events like solstices or equinoxes, the interplay of light and shadow within the temple would create dramatic effects, illuminating inner sanctuaries or casting specific hieroglyphs into relief, turning the stone structure into a massive, functioning calendar and celestial observatory. This profound connection to the cosmos suggests the priests viewed the temple not just as a building, but as a conduit, a permanent anchor point between the earthly and the heavenly. The concept of a stargate, a portal for travel or communication across vast distances, fits seamlessly into this worldview. For a priestly class that believed in the constant interplay between the physical and the divine, constructing a permanent, stable gateway within the most charged and aligned location in their world would be the ultimate expression of their sacred duty. It was here, in this nexus of divine power and astronomical precision, that the impossible could be made possible. To understand why the concept of a physical stargate would resonate so deeply with the Egyptian priesthood, we must look beyond the stones of Luxor and into the very bedrock of their belief system, their mythology. For the ancient Egyptians, the universe was not a void to be crossed but a series of interconnected realms, and the idea of moving between them was not science fiction. It was a fundamental aspect of their cosmology. Their sacred texts are filled with the concept of thresholds, doorways, and portals, suggesting that the priests of Luxor would have been working from a rich, well-established blueprint of cosmic travel. One of the oldest and most powerful references comes from the pyramid texts, the world's oldest known religious writings, inscribed deep within the burial chambers of kings over 4,000 years ago. These spells were designed to guide the soul of the pharaoh on its perilous journey to the afterlife. They speak explicitly of a door of the heavens, a specific guarded gateway through which the deceased king must pass to join the gods in the celestial realm. This was not a metaphorical concept, but a very real, albeit ethereal, architectural feature of the cosmos. The spells provide the king with the precise words to say to the divine guardians to compel them to open this door. This reveals a profound belief that the boundary between worlds was not impermeable. It was a barrier that could be unlocked with the right knowledge, the right ritual, and the right authority, a specialty of the high priests. This theme of journeying between realms is most vividly illustrated in the daily voyage of the sun god, Ra. Every single day, Ra did not simply vanish at sunset. He entered the Duat, the ancient Egyptian underworld or afterlife realm. His journey through the 12 hours of the night was a perilous trek through a different dimension, filled with hostile forces, lakes of fire, and serpentine monsters like the great serpent Apep, who sought to devour him and end all of creation. Ra's sacred bark, or boat, was the vessel that carried him through this non-terrestrial landscape, and his ultimate rebirth at dawn was a triumphant emergence from this gateway back into the visible world. This entire narrative paints the Duat not as a static heaven or hell, but as a parallel dimension with its own geography, accessible through specific points at specific times, navigable only with immense power and knowledge. And this brings us to the nature of the Duat itself, a concept often mistranslated simply as the underworld. It was far more complex. Egyptologists like Dr. Ramona Wheeler described the Duat as a cosmic interface, a liminal space that existed alongside the mortal world. It was the realm of the dead, yes, but it was also the source of dreams, of stars, and of primordial waters. Crucially, it was believed to be physically accessible from specific locations on Earth. Certain tombs, temples, and even natural features like caves or mountain peaks were thought to be points where the veil between worlds was thin, natural stargates. The most significant of these was believed to be in the extreme west, where the sun set, marking the entrance to the night journey. When you synthesize these myths, the door of the heavens, Ra's dimensional voyage, and the Duat as an accessible realm, a stunning picture emerges. The priesthood wasn't just reciting stories, they were preserving a cosmological map. Their ambition at Luxor may not have been to invent something entirely new, but to replicate and stabilize these mythological portals. If a door to the heavens existed for the soul of a king, could a physical one be built for a living initiate? If Ra's bark could sail into the Duat, could a temple be constructed to serve as a permanent, anchored dock for that vessel? The mythology provided the objective, and their advanced understanding of astronomy, architecture, and energy provided the potential means. They weren't building a Stargate based on fantasy. They were attempting to engineer a permanent, controlled manifestation of a spiritual truth they held as self-evident. If the mythology provided the blueprint, then the architecture of Luxor and its neighboring Karnak temple complex was the physical machinery. These structures are far more than rows of statues and hieroglyph-covered walls. They are vast, intricate devices engineered with a purpose that seems to transcend simple worship. To walk their processional ways and hidden corridors is to navigate the inner workings of a potentially colossal mechanism designed to channel and focus energy. The most striking feature connecting these two monumental sites is the nearly 2-mile-long avenue of sphinxes that runs in a near-perfect straight line between them. This wasn't just a decorative road for ceremonies. Many researchers see it as a powerful ley line or energy conduit, physically connecting the two temples into a single, massive circuit. Karnak, dedicated to Amun-Ra, was considered the powerhouse, the primary source of divine energy. Luxor, dedicated to the royal Ka, or the divine life force of the pharaoh, was the reception point. This creates a fascinating dynamic. Energy generated at Karnak could be channeled down this avenue to be utilized or amplified within the more secluded and secure confines of Luxor Temple. This idea of a directional energy flow is central to the Stargate theory, suggesting the priests were creating a focused beam of power necessary to stabilize a portal. Within Luxor Temple itself, the design becomes increasingly restricted and complex the further one journeys inward, mirroring the path to higher states of consciousness. The temple's axis deliberately shifts by several degrees as you move from the outer courtyards toward the inner sanctum. Mainstream archaeology often attributes this to the piecemeal construction over centuries, but alternative theorists propose a far more intentional reason. This nuanced change in alignment could have been a precise calibration, designed to align the temple's heart not with a generic east-west solar path, but with a specific star or celestial event critical to their proposed operations. It's a subtle architectural tweak that would be meaningless unless you are aiming for an incredibly specific target in the night sky. The most compelling evidence for hidden functions lies beneath the surface. While not fully mapped for public knowledge, there are well-documented accounts and some limited access to subterranean chambers and tunnels beneath Luxor. The most famous of these is the so-called basement area, a series of rooms with low ceilings and stark, undecorated walls that stand in stark contrast to the ornate halls above. These spaces feel purely functional, utilitarian. Their purpose remains an official mystery, but they perfectly fit the description of a control chamber or a stabilized foundation for a powerful apparatus. Furthermore, stories persist of a vast labyrinth of tunnels connecting not only different parts of Luxor, but potentially running all the way to Karnak and even the Valley of the Kings. If even partially true, this underground network would have allowed the highest priests to move unseen and manage whatever technology was in place away from the eyes of the public and even most of the temple staff. Finally, we must consider the precise celestial alignments engineered into the stone. The temple is peppered with small, strategic apertures and light shafts. On meticulously calculated days of the year, a beam of sunlight would travel through these openings to illuminate the statue of a specific god in the inner sanctuary for a few precious moments. While this is often presented as a beautiful ritual from an engineering perspective, it's a demonstration of pinpoint accuracy. It proves the priests possessed the mathematical and architectural skill to use their building as a giant targeting device, capable of harnessing and focusing celestial energy at a specific point in time and space. If they could focus light with such precision, what else could they focus? The hypothetical Stargate isn't imagined in a void. It's built upon a foundation of very real, very advanced engineering that turned myth into potential reality. This profound mastery of the heavens was never merely observational. It was intrinsically operational, woven into the very foundation of their sacred architecture. To truly grasp the scale of their ambition at Luxor, we must look up to the stars they revered as divine ancestors and cosmic maps. The Egyptian priesthood's sophisticated understanding of astronomy and astrology wasn't about simple horoscopes. It was a precise science of timing and alignment, a belief that specific celestial configurations could thin the veil between dimensions, potentially making the impossible possible. Their entire cosmic calendar revolved around a celestial anchor point, the star Sirius, known to them as Sopdet. For the ancient Egyptians, the annual heliacal rising of Sirius, its first reappearance in the pre-dawn sky after a 70-day period of invisibility, was the most significant event of the year. This event coincided almost exactly with the Nile's life-giving inundation, a natural phenomenon that brought fertile soil and renewed life to the entire kingdom. They saw this not as a coincidence but as causation. The return of Sopdet from the Duat literally triggered the rebirth of their world. This established a powerful principle in their worldview, that a specific star at a specific moment in its cycle could directly influence energy and events on Earth. If the return of one star could activate the life force of an entire nation, what might the focused alignment of multiple stars achieve within a specially engineered temple? This stellar reverence extended to the constellation of Orion, which they saw as the celestial embodiment of Osiris, the god of resurrection and the afterlife. Just as Osiris triumphed over death to become lord of the Duat, the stars of Orion were believed to be the eternal destination for the soul of the pharaoh. The three stars of Orion's belt were of particular importance, often depicted in hieroglyphs and mirrored in the alignment of the three great pyramids at Giza. This creates a compelling pattern. The earthly architecture of the Egyptians was consistently designed as a reflection of the celestial realm. A temple, therefore, was not just a building dedicated to a god. It was a terrestrial counterpart to a specific star or constellation, an attempt to bring a piece of that cosmic power down to earth and anchor it in stone. This brings us to the critical function of temple alignments. The precise orientation of Luxor and other temples was not symbolic, it was functional, a form of sacred engineering. The walls, columns, and doorways were positioned to act like a giant gun sight, targeting a particular celestial body on a specific night. During an equinox or a solstice, or on the night of Sirius's rising, a beam of starlight or moonlight could travel down a precisely angled corridor or through a strategically placed aperture to strike a statue's eyes, illuminate a specific hieroglyph, or flood an altar with otherworldly light. Egyptologists rightly view these events as powerful ritualistic moments, but from the perspective of the Stargate theory, they were something far more profound. They were activation sequences. Think of it not as a simple light show, but as the turning of a key in a cosmic lock. The priests, through their meticulous records, knew the exact moment this energy would arrive. They would be prepared with rituals, chants, and offerings, actions we might interpret as a method of focusing human consciousness and intention to meet this incoming cosmic energy. The synergy of these two forces, the precise celestial energy from a specific star and the directed spiritual energy from the high priests within the amplifier of the temple's architecture, could have been the theoretical mechanism for achieving a temporary stabilization of a portal. The Stargate, if it existed, might not have been a permanent, swirling vortex, but a transient phenomenon, opened only when the heavens were in perfect harmony and the right keys were turned, both in the sky and on the ground. This brings us to a fundamental and captivating question that lies at the very heart of this mystery. Were the priests of Luxor masters of a lost, advanced technology, or were they wielders of a purely ritualistic divine magic? From our modern perspective, these two concepts seem worlds apart, science versus spirituality. But for the ancient Egyptian mind, this distinction likely did not exist. Their entire worldview was built on the principle that the physical and the spiritual were deeply intertwined, two sides of the same cosmic coin. To them, a magical spell was a technology of consciousness, and a precisely engineered temple was a machine for divine connection. When we examine ancient texts like the Pyramid texts or the Book of the Dead, we find instructions that read less like prayers and more like technical manuals. Spells are provided with specific names of deities to invoke, precise gestures to make, and exact words to pronounce. One of the most potent and recurring concepts is the ritual for opening the sky or opening the door of the heavens. This wasn't a vague, poetic wish for a pleasant afterlife. It was a detailed procedure. The deceased or the priest acting on their behalf was given the exact dialogue to use when confronting the divine guardians of the portal, demanding passage as a right of someone who possesses the sacred knowledge. This mirrors the operation of a secure facility where knowing the correct password grants you access. The implication is that the universe operates on a set of spiritual laws that can be understood and manipulated through correct action and intention. This isn't magic in the sense of a fairy tale. It's magic as applied cosmology, a science of the soul and the structure of reality. This idea finds a startling parallel in our own modern science fiction, particularly in the popular concept of the Stargate. In these stories, a Stargate is never a product of mere wishful thinking. It is a complex piece of machinery, often built from exotic materials and requiring a massive power source to generate a stable, artificial wormhole. Crucially, it needs a coordinate-based addressing system to connect to another gate across the vastness of space. The dialing device, which inputs a specific sequence of symbols, is the key that literally unlocks the door to another world. Now consider the Egyptian rituals. The temple is the machine, built with precision and aligned to celestial coordinates. The energy source is the combined power of the cosmos, Sirius, Orion, the sun, harnessed through its architecture, and the life-giving energy of the Nile. The dialing sequence is the ritual itself, the specific chant, the correct offering, the true name of the god, all performed at the exact moment the stars are in alignment. The parallels are too striking to dismiss as mere coincidence. It suggests that our fictional stargates may be a subconscious echo of a very ancient, very real belief system. So, were the priests technologists or magicians? The evidence suggests they were both, and that our categories are too limited to describe their unified approach. They used tangible, advanced engineering, incredible precision in stone cutting, a deep understanding of astronomy and mathematics, and the creation of massive energy-conducting structures. Simultaneously, they employed the intangible technology of consciousness, focused group intention, sonic vibration from chanting, the symbolic power of hieroglyphs, and the altered states of awareness potentially induced by rituals or even natural phenomena within the temple, such as infrasound from underground chambers or the disorienting effect of flickering light in long, dark corridors. Their goal was not to choose between science and spirit, but to synthesize them into a single tool for transcending the limits of the physical world. They may have been attempting to build a machine that could only be operated by an enlightened mind, creating a permanent gateway where heaven and earth could truly meet. Rising from the sacred ground of Luxor like petrified rays of sunlight, the obelisks stand as some of the most powerful and enigmatic symbols of ancient Egypt's architectural genius. To the casual observer, they are magnificent monuments to vanity and artistic skill, but to the priesthood that designed them, they were likely something far more profound: precision-engineered conduits designed to channel cosmic energy directly from the heavens down to the earth. Their very form is a clue to their function. A typical obelisk is a four-sided, single-piece stone pillar that tapers perfectly toward the top, culminating in a pyramidion cap that was often sheathed in electrum, a brilliant alloy of gold and silver. This design was not arbitrary. The pyramidion was designed to be the first part of the monument to catch the light of the rising sun, and the electrum coating would have caused it to blaze with an otherworldly, reflective fire, making the entire structure appear as a solidified beam of light connecting the land of the gods to the realm of humanity. This was no mere spectacle. It was a deliberate, functional act of sacred engineering, turning the obelisk into a permanent, stabilized antenna for divine energy. The inscriptions that cover every surface of these monoliths provide a clear manual for their intended use. They are almost invariably dedicated to the sun god Ra and are covered in hieroglyphs that speak of light, power, and transformation. The vertical inscriptions are particularly significant, as they often detail the king's devotion and his role in facilitating this divine connection. More than simple prayers, these carved texts can be interpreted as a form of sacred coding or vibrational instruction. Alternative researchers like Christopher Dunn have proposed that the precise geometry and resonant properties of the obelisks, combined with these inscriptions, might have been designed to interact with the natural energy fields of the earth, effectively turning the stone into a tuned resonator. The idea is that they didn't just symbolize a connection, they actively created and stabilized one, functioning as a primary energy source or a stabilizing anchor point for a larger system, much like a modern power grid relies on substations to manage electrical flow. This concept of the obelisk as an energy conductor is powerfully reinforced by its inseparable partner, the twin pillar. At the entrance of Luxor Temple, and indeed at most major temples, obelisks were almost always erected in pairs. Egyptologists like Dr. Mark Lehner point out that this pairing was deeply symbolic, representing the duality of the Egyptian cosmos, the balanced forces of male and female, earth and sky, order and chaos. However, from a more technological perspective, this duality takes on a new meaning. Two conductive pillars placed a specific distance apart could be seen as creating a circuit or an energy field between them. The space between the paired obelisks at a temple gateway wouldn't just be a grand entrance, it would be a charged threshold, a potential field of energy that one had to pass through to enter the sacred space. This transforms the gateway from a passive architectural feature into an active, energized interface, a literal and conceptual point of transition between the mundane and the divine. When we apply this understanding to the Stargate theory, the role of the obelisks becomes electrifyingly clear. If the inner sanctum of Luxor was indeed the proposed location for a dimensional portal, the obelisks could have served a critical dual purpose. First, as energy generators or collectors, drawing down celestial power from the sun and stars and grounding it into the temple's foundation, providing the immense and stable power source such a portal would theoretically require. Second, and perhaps more intriguingly, they could have acted as harmonic stabilizers. The incredible effort required to quarry, transport, and erect a single piece of stone of that size and perfection suggests a purpose far beyond the decorative. A monolithic stone, perfectly shaped and inscribed, would have unique resonant properties. It's possible the priests understood that such a stone, vibrating in harmony with the Earth's own frequency and the frequencies of the cosmos, could be used to tune the space around it, creating a stable harmonic field necessary to prevent a theoretical wormhole from collapsing or becoming uncontrollable. Therefore, the obelisks of Luxor were likely far more than stone symbols. They were the vital, active components in a vast, sophisticated system of sacred technology. They were the power plants and the tuning forks for an apparatus that sought to bridge worlds, standing as eternal, silent witnesses to a science so advanced that we are only now, millennia later, beginning to decipher its breathtaking potential. For all its grandeur above the sand, the true heart of Luxor's mystery may lie in the profound silence of the world beneath our feet. Across centuries, a persistent stream of reports, from ancient legends to the journals of early European explorers, has whispered of a hidden, labyrinthine world below the temple, a network of chambers and tunnels that has never been fully mapped or understood. These are not just tales of forgotten storerooms, but of spaces deliberately sealed and hidden from view, holding secrets the priesthood deemed too powerful for the uninitiated. One of the most compelling historical accounts comes from the writings of the Roman historian Strabo, who visited Egypt in the 1st century BCE. He described a grand temple at Thebes, almost certainly Luxor, that was renowned for its massive foundations and its lodgings that could hold a multitude of people. But the most intriguing detail was his mention of a way leading to subterranean chambers, a passage through which a person could travel. This wasn't a vague myth. It was an observation recorded by a respected scholar of the ancient world, suggesting that access to these underground spaces, while restricted, was once a known feature of the site. Centuries later, in the late 19th century, the French Egyptologist Gaston Maspero, then director of the Egyptian Antiquities Service, conducted extensive work at Luxor. During his excavations, he and his team uncovered evidence of what they described as a vast hypogeum, a Greek term for an underground temple or tomb. Their findings pointed to a sprawling subterranean area consisting of numerous rooms and corridors extending far beneath the visible structure. Due to the instability of the chambers and the limitations of their time, they were unable to fully explore this network, and many of the passages they discovered were subsequently reburied or lost, becoming the stuff of modern legend. These historical anecdotes have found a startling echo in the cold, hard data of 21st century technology. In recent years, teams using non-invasive tools like ground-penetrating radar have scanned the Earth around and under Luxor Temple. The results have been electrifying. These scans have repeatedly identified significant anomalies, large, seemingly man-made voids and linear features that run at depths and in directions that do not correspond to any known mapped chambers. These aren't just small gaps in the soil, they are indications of substantial architectural spaces hidden from view, waiting for the right expedition to uncover them. The data suggests that what we see today is merely the tip of a vast architectural iceberg, with the majority of its bulk remaining buried and unexplored. The purpose of these secret chambers is the subject of intense speculation. Mainstream archaeology might suggest they were used for storage, sacred burials of ritual objects, or as safe crypts for the temple's most valuable treasures. But given the temple's role as a center for the highest levels of priestly activity, other possibilities emerge. Could these subterranean halls have been the true inner sanctum, a place where the most dangerous or powerful rituals were performed away from even the temple staff. The Stargate theory proposes an even more fascinating function, that these chambers were not just ritual spaces, but the actual engine room for the proposed portal. Imagine a vast underground hall, its walls lined with veins of quartz or other piezoelectric crystals that could naturally amplify energy. This space could have housed the primary apparatus, perhaps a massive, ring-like structure of an unknown alloy, or a series of harmonic resonators designed to vibrate at a specific frequency. The tunnels connecting to other sites like Karnak would not be mere passageways, but insulated conduits for channeling the immense energy required for activation from the larger powerhouse temple. The deepest, most secure chamber would be the control room, where the high priests could monitor celestial alignments and perform the precise rituals needed to stabilize the gateway, safe from interference and hidden from history. These hidden depths transform our understanding of Luxor from a temple into a potential machine. The grand halls and towering columns above ground were the public face, the magnificent cathedral designed to inspire awe and devotion. But the true work, the application of a sacred technology we can scarcely imagine, was conducted in the cool, dark silence below, where the earth itself provided both insulation and a direct connection to the telluric energies of the planet. The sealed doors and forgotten corridors are not an end to the story, but an invitation to look deeper, promising that the greatest revelations of ancient Egypt still lie waiting in the dark. These elaborate structures and precise alignments would have been nothing more than silent, empty shells without the vital force that brought them to life, the rituals and ceremonies performed by the high priests. The true engine of the Luxor complex was not stone or starlight alone, but the living, breathing human element, the meticulously choreographed performances that fused architecture, astronomy, and consciousness into a single, focused act of will. To understand their potential for opening a gateway, we must step into the sandals of a high priest on the eve of a great ceremony, feeling the weight of the moment and the precise actions required to bridge the worlds. The entire process began with purification, a physical and spiritual cleansing that was absolutely non-negotiable. The priests would shave their entire bodies to eliminate any potential for lice or impurities, and they underwent rigorous bathing rituals using water from the sacred Nile, which was believed to carry the essence of the primordial ocean of creation. They then dressed in pristine white linen robes and leopard skins, garments symbolizing purity and a connection to the celestial realm. This wasn't merely about hygiene, it was a process of shedding the mundane, earthly self to become a suitable vessel for divine energy. A single impure thought or a physical blemish was believed to be enough to disrupt the delicate energy of the ritual, potentially causing it to fail or even backfire catastrophically. The priest was preparing to become a living conductor, and every step ensured he was properly insulated and grounded for the immense forces he sought to channel. Once purified, the ceremony itself would commence in the deepest, most restricted chamber of the temple, far from any public view. The air would be thick with the smoke of Kai-Fi, a complex temple incense made from ingredients like honey, wine, raisins, myrrh, and juniper, which was believed to please the gods and induce a state of heightened awareness. The central act was the invocation, a process of literally calling a god into the space. This was not a passive prayer but an active summoning, achieved through the potent combination of Heka, the magic of authoritative speech, and Jah, the magic of perceptive knowledge. The priests didn't beg for an audience. They used the true, secret names of the deities, names that held power over the being itself. By speaking these names with correct pronunciation and intention, they believed they could compel the god to appear. This is where the descriptions in hieroglyphic texts become absolutely critical to our understanding. The walls of temples like Luxor and Edfu are covered in elaborate scenes depicting the king or the high priest interacting directly with the gods. In these scenes, the god is often shown physically touching the king, offering him the ankh, the symbol of life, or imparting a sacred object. Mainstream Egyptology often interprets these as symbolic representations of divine approval. However, the Stargate theory offers a more literal reading that these are records of actual, tangible contact. The rituals described in the accompanying texts provide the how-to guide for achieving this contact. They detail the exact offerings, specific foods, precious oils, and flowers that were the fuel for the interaction, the precise chants that were the activation codes, and the gestures that served as the switches to complete the circuit. The use of sound, particularly rhythmic chanting, and the playing of instruments like the sistrum, a sacred rattle, was likely a key technological component. Modern research into cymatics shows that sound waves can directly influence matter, creating complex, sacred geometric patterns in sand or water. The priests, through millennia of observation, may have empirically discovered that specific sonic frequencies could interact with the temple's architecture and the Earth's natural energies. Their chants, repeated in unison, might have been designed to create a standing wave of vibration within the granite chamber, resonating with the crystals in the stone and physically altering the energy of the space. This sonic scaffolding could theoretically have been used to stabilize a portal, making the intangible temporarily tangible. Similarly, the use of light was equally precise and intentional. While the grand light shows of the solstices were for major festivals, smaller, more targeted rituals could have used reflected sunlight from polished copper or gold plates to hit specific hieroglyphs or symbols carved into the walls of the inner sanctum. Each symbol was believed to hold power in its own right. The act of illuminating a specific sequence of these symbols in a set order, accompanied by the correct chant, could be interpreted as inputting a password into a celestial security system. The entire ceremony, therefore, emerges not as a vague religious observance, but as a rigorous, repeatable protocol, a multisensory technology that combined precise timing, controlled energy, and focused consciousness with the sole purpose of temporarily thinning the veil between dimensions and facilitating a communion that we, from our modern perspective, can only describe as contact with beings from another realm. The ambition of the priests at Luxor appears staggering in isolation, but what if their work was not an isolated endeavor? What if this temple was merely one node in a vast global network of sacred sites, all designed to interact with the same cosmic forces? This idea moves us from the specific mysteries of a single Egyptian temple to a breathtaking, planet-wide vision of ancient ingenuity. When we pull back the lens to examine other monumental sites from antiquity, a compelling pattern of shared principles emerges, suggesting a lost chapter in human history where cultures across the world might have been tapping into the same universal energy grid. Consider the awe-inspiring precision of the Great Pyramid of Giza, located just a few hundred miles north of Luxor. While often celebrated as a tomb, its design reveals an almost obsessive focus on celestial alignment. Its sides are aligned with the four cardinal directions with an accuracy within a fraction of a degree, and its descending and ascending passageways are precisely targeted to key stars like Alpha Draconis and Sirius. This is not the work of a culture focused solely on burial. It is the signature of celestial engineers. The so-called King's Chamber within the pyramid is built from massive granite blocks, a stone known for its piezoelectric properties, meaning it can generate an electrical charge under mechanical stress. Some researchers, like engineer Christopher Dunn, have proposed the chamber was not a tomb but the heart of a massive energy-generating machine, perhaps even a harmonic resonator. The parallel to Luxor is striking. Both sites use precise astronomical alignment, specific resonant stones, and a subterranean component, the pyramid's underground chamber, in their design. This suggests the Egyptian priesthood may have been applying the same sacred technological principles on a grander, more powerful scale at Giza, potentially creating a primary power generator for the entire region's network of temples. Now let's journey far beyond the sands of Egypt to the windswept Salisbury Plain in England, where the enigmatic circle of Stonehenge stands. Despite the vast geographical and cultural distance separating them, Stonehenge shares a profound conceptual link with Luxor. It, too, is a masterpiece of celestial alignment, engineered so that the rising sun on the summer solstice perfectly strikes the heel stone, flooding the center of the circle with light. The blue stones used in its construction were transported over 150 miles, and like the granite of Egypt, they possess unique acoustic and piezoelectric properties. Researchers from the Royal College of Art in London have even demonstrated that these stones ring like a bell when struck, leading to theories that Stonehenge was a massive acoustic chamber used for sonic healing or rituals. This focus on harnessing energy through stone and stellar alignment is a direct echo of the Egyptian approach. Both sites function as colossal calendars and energy transducers built to capture and amplify specific celestial events. The common thread is a deep understanding that certain locations on Earth, when engineered correctly and activated at the right astrological moment, become conduits for transformative power. This pattern of sacred geography extends across the globe. In Peru, the magnificent stonework of Machu Picchu and the temple at Sacsayhuaman are built upon powerful geological fault lines which are natural sources of Earth energy. The Incas believed these were places where the Earth spirit was strongest. In Cambodia, the temple complex of Angkor Wat is a terrestrial representation of the constellation Draco, mirroring the Egyptian practice of mapping the heavens onto the Earth. From the ziggurats of Mesopotamia to the temple mounds of North America, ancient cultures consistently went to unbelievable effort to build their most sacred structures on sites of unique geological and energetic character, aligning them with the cosmos. This recurring theme has given rise to the concept of ley lines or energy grid theories. Popularized by early 20th century amateur archaeologists, these theories propose that many ancient sacred sites are not randomly placed, but are positioned in straight-line alignments across the landscape, marking pathways of telluric or earth energy. While mainstream science remains skeptical of the mystical aspects, the geographical alignments are often verifiable. Luxor, for instance, sits on a nearly perfect straight line that connects it to the Great Pyramid of Giza and extends to the ancient city of Jerusalem. Whether one interprets these lines as channels of spiritual energy or simply as ancient trade and pilgrimage routes marked by sacred sites, their existence suggests a potential for coordination or a shared geographical knowledge that we are only beginning to appreciate. This points toward a truly revolutionary possibility that the ancient world was far more interconnected, both in knowledge and purpose, than our history books tell us. Could there have been a shared, advanced understanding of geomancy, the art of reading and manipulating the Earth's energy, that was known to priestly classes across continents? Perhaps this knowledge was not developed in isolation but was a remnant of a far older, lost global civilization whose ruins inspired the myths of Atlantis or a golden age. The priests of Luxor, then, would not have been singular geniuses but dedicated participants in a worldwide project, a network of power nodes designed to stabilize the planet's energy field, facilitate spiritual communication, or even serve as a navigation grid for interdimensional travel. Their temple was not just a gateway for Egypt, but one vital connection point in an ancient planet-wide internet of stone and spirit, a system whose true purpose and power we are still striving to comprehend. While the priests of Luxor worked in sacred secrecy, the stunning concept they might have pursued has exploded into the modern world through the vibrant lens of popular culture, transforming an esoteric ancient idea into a global phenomenon. It's a fascinating journey from the hidden chambers of a temple to the silver screen, showing how our collective imagination has been captivated by the possibility of stepping through a portal to the stars. This cultural embrace didn't come from nowhere. It often draws direct inspiration from the very myths and archaeological whispers we've been exploring, creating a powerful feedback loop between ancient mystery and modern storytelling. The term Stargate itself was catapulted into the mainstream by the 1994 film of the same name and its subsequent television franchises. In this narrative, a massive, ring-shaped device covered in mysterious symbols is discovered in Egypt, and it's revealed to be a portal that creates a stable wormhole to another planet. The heroes literally step through a shimmering, liquid-like energy field and emerge light years away in an instant. This portrayal is incredibly telling because it frames the Stargate not as magic, but as a form of advanced, albeit alien, technology. The film's backstory directly echoes the theory of Luxor, suggesting that a highly advanced civilization presented as extraterrestrial gods provided the ancient Egyptians with this incredible device. The symbols on the ring, they correspond to constellations forming a celestial address system, a concept that feels deeply resonant with the Egyptian priesthood's obsession with stellar alignments as a targeting mechanism. But the idea of cosmic gateways has much deeper roots in fiction. Long before the film, authors like H.P. Lovecraft wove tales of forbidden portals and ancient ruins that served as doorways to other dimensions teeming with alien entities. His story, The Shadow Out of Time, features vast cyclopean cities built by an ancient race that mastered travel across time and space through mental projection, a theme that mirrors the Egyptian spiritual journey through the Duat. Even earlier, Lewis Carroll's Alice's Looking Glass presented a common household mirror as a portal to a fantastical world, a domestic and whimsical take on a concept that ancient cultures treated with the utmost seriousness and reverence. These stories across different genres all play with the same core human yearning to transcend our physical limits and explore the ultimate unknown. What makes these fictional portrayals so engaging is how they parallel, and perhaps unconsciously channel, the actual principles we see at Luxor. The modern Stargate requires a massive power surge to initialize its connection, reminiscent of the theorized need to harness celestial energy from stars like Sirius. The dialing device inputs a complex coordinate sequence directly analogous to the precise rituals, chants, and offerings performed by the high priests at a specific astrological time. The event horizon of the fictional gate is a stable yet volatile energy barrier that must be perfectly controlled, a perfect metaphor for the dangerous liminal space of the Duat that Ra had to navigate each night, filled with threats that could unravel creation itself. This intersection of pop culture and archaeology does more than just entertain. It opens a unique door for understanding. For a viewer who has never studied ancient Egyptian mythology, the familiar imagery of a glowing, ring-shaped portal becomes a powerful bridge. It allows them to grasp the incredible ambition of the Luxor priests not as a dry, academic footnote, but as a tangible, thrilling possibility. The fictional narrative provides a visual and emotional shorthand for a complex spiritual and technological concept, making the ancient quest feel immediate and relevant. It raises a profound question. Are our most popular science fiction myths merely imaginative fantasies, or are they a form of cultural memory, a deep-seated intuition that our ancestors might have achieved something we are only now beginning to conceptualize with our own technology? The stories we tell ourselves about stargates, in a way, keep the ancient dream alive, allowing the whispers from beneath the sands of Luxor to find a new voice in every generation. For centuries, whispers of Egypt's hidden wonders have not been confined to local legend or temple inscriptions alone. They have spilled onto the pages of some of history's most renowned travelers and scholars, whose accounts, while often met with skepticism, add a compelling layer of testimony to the mystery of Luxor. The most famous of these early observers was the Greek historian Herodotus, often called the father of history, who traveled extensively throughout Egypt in the 5th century BCE. In his seminal work, The Histories, he devotes entire sections to describing the mind-boggling achievements of Egyptian civilization, from their construction techniques to their religious customs. But he also alludes to things he was not permitted to see. He writes of vast, labyrinthine underground structures beneath the pyramids, so complex and guarded that even the Egyptians of his time spoke of them with a sense of awe and caution. While he was not granted access to these subterranean wonders himself, his reporting indicates that the knowledge of a hidden, subterranean Egypt was preserved and discussed, even if its deepest secrets remained off-limits to outsiders. His work stands not as proof but as a critical data point, a respected external source confirming that the Egyptians themselves believed in a vast, hidden world beneath their most sacred monuments. Centuries later, a new wave of scholars emerged from the Arab world, whose caliphates controlled Egypt for hundreds of years. Their accounts are perhaps even more tantalizing because they often claim a degree of access that Herodotus was denied. One of the most frequently cited figures is the 10th century writer and geographer Al-Masudi. In his monumental work, The Meadows of Gold, he describes a tradition passed down among Egyptian priests and temple guardians. He writes of a vast, interconnected network of galleries and chambers beneath the Great Pyramids and the Sphinx, and he makes an astonishing claim that the ancient Egyptians not only stored their most advanced knowledge there, but also left behind artifacts of incredible power. Most strikingly, Al-Masudi records a legend of a doorway or gateway, not made of stone, but of a material that emitted a strange energy, and he notes that the priesthood held the secret to its operation. For a medieval scholar to describe something that sounds so analogous to a powered technological device is staggering. It forces us to ask, was he recording a garbled version of a much older truth, preserved as folklore long after the original priestly class had vanished? These historical anecdotes gain even more weight when we cross-reference them with the ancient Egyptians' own texts. While there is no hieroglyphic inscription that literally says Stargate Operational Manual, there are deeply cryptic passages that take on new meaning when viewed through this lens. The so-called cannibal hymn from the pyramid text is a prime example. On the surface, it describes the deceased king's ascent to the heavens in violently metaphorical terms, claiming he will seize the hearts of the gods and capture the essence of divine power. Mainstream Egyptology interprets this as a symbolic text about the king's supremacy over deities in the afterlife. However, a more unconventional reading suggests it could be describing a far more literal and technological process. The vivid language of seizing and harnessing power, of ascending and traveling the sky, could be a ritualized mythological description of the activation sequence for a device that draws energy from a celestial source to open a dimensional corridor. The king isn't just praying for a journey, he is, through the priest's ritual, initiating a transfer. The challenge, of course, lies in separating fact from interpretation. A skeptic would rightly argue that Herodotus was known for sometimes repeating tall tales he heard, that Arab historians like Al-Masudi were recording myths centuries removed from the source, and that interpreting violent, poetic hymns as technical manuals is a classic case of seeing what you want to see. This is a completely valid perspective. The standard academic view is that these accounts are a blend of misunderstood rituals, symbolic architecture, and the natural human tendency to ascribe supernatural explanations to things we don't fully understand. Yet, the persistence of the theme is what gives one pause. From the pyramid texts to Herodotus to Al-Masudi, a consistent thread runs through millennia, a belief that the deepest secrets of Egypt were not in plain sight but hidden below, that their power was not merely spiritual but operational, and that their ultimate purpose was to bridge the gap between the world of humanity and the realm of the gods. These historical records may not be a smoking gun, but they form a resonant chorus of voices across the ages, all pointing toward the same breathtaking possibility. They suggest that the theory of a Stargate is not a modern fantasy imposed upon the past, but a modern name for a very ancient idea that has been whispered about for thousands of years. Given the immense effort and secrecy involved, What ultimate purpose could have driven the priesthood to pursue a project of such staggering complexity and scale? The mythology they guarded so fiercely provides our most compelling clues, painting a picture of a device with multiple, interconnected functions far beyond our modern concept of a simple doorway. One of the most profound proposed purposes was spiritual ascension, a literal, physical method of achieving the ultimate goal of Egyptian religion, to become one with the gods or enact an effective spirit. The pyramid texts are filled with spells designed to propel the pharaoh's soul through the celestial realms, but what if these incantations were more than just prayers? They could have been the operational protocols for a physical ascension process. Imagine a high-ranking initiate, perhaps the pharaoh himself, standing within the energized field of the gateway at the precise moment of celestial alignment. The ritual, the focused energy, and the resonant frequency of the chamber might not have been meant to simply open a door, but to transform the very essence of the individual passing through it, elevating their consciousness and vibrational state to that of a divine being, effectively achieving in life what was promised for the afterlife. This wasn't about escaping the world, but about transcending its limitations to become a co-creator within the cosmic order, a living God walking among humanity. Beyond personal transformation, the gateway likely served a critical diplomatic function, direct communication and communion with the deities themselves. We must move beyond seeing the gods as abstract concepts. To the Egyptians, they were real, powerful, intelligent forces, the Neteru, who governed the laws of the universe. Maintaining a relationship with them was essential for the survival of the nation and the stability of Maat. The daily rituals performed in the temple were essentially a maintenance of this relationship, but the Stargate could have been the technology for a direct summit. During times of great crisis, an impending drought, a threat of invasion, a dynastic dispute, the highest priests might have activated the portal to literally call a council of the gods. The vivid temple reliefs showing the pharaoh face to face with Amun-Ra or Horus, receiving the Ankh of life directly from their hands, might be recordings of these interdimensional diplomatic meetings. The gateway would have been the ultimate hotline, a secure channel for receiving direct guidance, wisdom, and perhaps even technological or agricultural knowledge to steer the civilization through perilous times. It was the physical manifestation of their belief that the divine was not distant but immanent and accessible. This leads to the thrilling possibility of physical travel to the very realms these deities were believed to inhabit. The mythology is explicit. Ra traveled through the Duat in his solar bark every night. This was not a metaphorical journey but a perilous voyage through a literal, though non-terrestrial, landscape. The Stargate at Luxor could have been conceived as a permanent, anchored docking station for this divine vessel, a place where it could safely interface with the earthly plane. Furthermore, if the Duat was understood as a parallel dimension or a specific region of the cosmos, the gateway could have been a means for the most enlightened priests to embark on their own exploratory missions. They might have traveled to the Field of Reeds, the Egyptian paradise, to verify the conditions of the afterlife or to retrieve knowledge from the blessed dead. Or they could have ventured to the astral realms associated with specific stars like Orion or Sirius, believed to be the homes of Osiris and Isis. This transforms the priests from mere ritualists into the world's first astronauts, explorers of the ultimate frontier, using a technology of consciousness and energy to navigate the geography of the soul and the cosmos. Finally, we must consider the most pragmatic and haunting possibility, that the Stargate was the ultimate contingency plan, a means of preserving the core of their knowledge and civilization through a predicted cataclysm. Cultures across the globe speak of a great cycle of ages, punctuated by periodic global resets, floods, fires, or impacts from the heavens. The Egyptians were deeply aware of this concept, referencing the destruction of previous ages. The gateway could have been designed as an ark not of wood but of energy. In the face of an impending disaster, the most vital elements, the sacred texts, the genetic lineage of the royal house, the highest teachings of the mystery schools, could have been transferred through the portal to a safe location in another dimension or a stable point in the space-time continuum. Alternatively, the gateway itself might have been a shelter, a stable pocket dimension where a chosen few could wait out the turmoil and return to repopulate and rebuild the world, emerging as the divine teachers and leaders of a new age. This purpose casts the entire endeavor in a new light. It was not an act of mere curiosity, but a desperate, brilliant act of species preservation, a final, profound effort to ensure that the light of their civilization would never be fully extinguished, no matter what darkness fell upon the earth. When we strip away the modern allure of the Stargate theory and look coldly at the stones of Luxor, we are forced to confront a bedrock question of sheer practicality. How could a Bronze Age civilization, even a remarkably advanced one, possibly engineer a device of such complexity? To answer this, we must examine the tangible evidence of their capabilities, the tools, the materials, and the staggering organization of labor that turned grand visions into immutable granite reality. The archaeological record reveals a society that was, in many ways, an engineering anomaly, achieving a level of precision and scale that continues to challenge our understanding of their era. First, consider the primary medium of their ambition, stone. The temples, obelisks, and statues were not crafted from soft limestone alone. They employed immense quantities of granite, quartzite, and basalt, some of the hardest stones on Earth. Granite, for instance, rates a 7 on the Mohs hardness scale. To shape it, the Egyptians would have primarily used tools made of copper, a metal that rates only a 3. This presents a seeming impossibility, like trying to carve a diamond with a stick of butter. Mainstream Egyptology explains this through a combination of incredible patience and ingenious technique. They used spherical dolerite hammerstones, a much harder igneous rock, to pound the granite, gradually pulverizing the crystalline structure. For drilling, they employed tubular drills, likely made from copper with a cutting slurry of water and an abrasive grit like quartz sand. This slurry did the actual cutting as the copper tube was rotated, a slow but effective process that left behind telltale spiral grooves on core samples found at sites like Giza. This demonstrates a profound empirical understanding of material science, even if they didn't possess the vocabulary for it. They knew that a softer material, when combined with a harder abrasive and kinetic energy, could triumph over a seemingly unconquerable substance. The transportation and erection of these multi-hundred-ton monuments remain, to this day, a subject of fierce debate. An obelisk is not merely a large stone, it is an incredibly slender and fragile one until it is standing upright. A single mistake during quarrying, loading, or raising would mean shattering years of labor. The largest obelisks, like the unfinished one still lying in the Aswan quarry, weigh over 1,000 tons. The prevailing theory is that they were moved on massive wooden sledges, dragged over lubricated causeways, and loaded onto specially built barges during the Nile's inundation when water levels were highest. To erect one, it's believed they constructed a giant ramp of sand and rubble, slowly hauling the obelisk up until it could be pivoted into a pre-dug foundation pit. The logistical coordination for such an operation is almost military in its precision, requiring the flawless orchestration of thousands of laborers, engineers, and overseers. This was not brute force, it was applied physics on a monumental scale, a testament to a civilization that had mastered the art of moving mountains one stone at a time. This leads to the question of the workforce itself. The classical image of whip-driven slaves dying under the hot sun to build the pyramids is largely a myth popularized by Hollywood. Archaeological evidence from workers' villages at Giza reveals a different story. A highly organized, rotating labor force of skilled and semi-skilled Egyptian citizens who were well-fed, housed, and received medical care. They were likely conscripted for a period of civic service, a duty known as corvée labor, which was a common form of taxation. These were not slaves, but farmers, artisans, and craftsmen working during the inundation season when their fields were flooded and agricultural work was impossible. This system provided a predictable, renewable, and vast pool of manpower that could be deployed for massive state projects. The organization required to feed, house, and direct this army of workers is in itself a breathtaking administrative achievement that speaks to a centralized authority with an incredible capacity for planning and logistics. Yet, for all this evidence of remarkable but explainable human effort, there are anomalies that fuel the theory of something more. The breathtaking precision of the stonework at Luxor and other sites is one such anomaly. The massive blocks are often joined with seams so tight that a razor blade cannot be inserted between them. This goes far beyond the requirements of structural integrity and suggests a near-obsessive pursuit of perfection. Some researchers point to the intricate patterns of tool marks, which sometimes resemble those left by modern saws or even advanced machining, arguing that the simple copper and sand method could not account for such fine, consistent work on an industrial scale. Furthermore, the mathematical consistency found in their architecture, the repeated use of sacred geometry like the golden ratio and precise pi calculations in pyramid design, hints at a theoretical knowledge that seems to surpass the practical needs of simple construction. It feels more like the application of a deep cosmological principle, as if the buildings themselves were mathematical prayers made solid. This is the crux of the debate. Was their technology entirely homegrown, the product of millennia of accumulated trial and error, brilliant but fundamentally human? Or does the presence of these tantalizing anomalies suggest the involvement of something else, a lost, advanced knowledge from a forgotten epoch? Or even, as some alternative theorists propose, guidance from an external, non-human intelligence? The mainstream view holds firmly to the former, seeing a clear, evolutionary path of technological development in the archaeological record. The other perspective looks at the same evidence and sees gaps, seeing the finished product as too sophisticated, too perfect to be the work of a society with simple bronze tools. Perhaps the truth lies not in a binary choice, but in a synthesis. Perhaps the priesthood's true, advanced technology was not a physical toolkit of alien alloy, but a holistic, unified science that seamlessly blended physics, mathematics, sacred geometry, and a manipulated consciousness, a science so complete that it allowed them to achieve, with copper and sand, what we might struggle to replicate even today. Their greatest tool may not have been the dolerite hammer, but the disciplined, focused intention of a master architect who understood that stone, stars, and spirit were all part of the same intricate equation. This pursuit of perfection in stonework leads us to a dimension of their work that is felt rather than seen, the invisible yet tangible power of sound. If the architecture of Luxor was the physical machine, then sound was its operating system, the dynamic energy that could bring the silent stones to life. The ancient Egyptians held a profound belief in the creative power of the spoken word. They called it Heka, the authority of sound itself. According to their creation myths, the god Ptah spoke the universe into existence, thinking the concepts and then naming them to make them real. This wasn't a metaphor, it was a cosmological principle. Sound was the fundamental tool of creation, and the priesthood aimed to wield that same tool within the resonant chambers of their temples. The design of these spaces suggests an advanced understanding of acoustics that we are only now rediscovering. Many of the inner sanctums and subterranean chambers were built from hard, dense granite and quartzite. These materials are not just durable, they are highly resonant. When sound is generated within a confined space made of such stone, the waves don't just fade away, they bounce, they amplify, and they create standing waves, patterns of resonance that can physically be felt in the air and within the body. Modern experiments in places like the hypostyle hall at Karnak have demonstrated these incredible acoustic effects. A hand clap or a chant can produce strange, lingering reverberations, suggesting the priests could have used these natural properties to create a pervasive sonic environment for their rituals. The temple itself was a giant instrument, finely tuned to amplify their intentions. This moves beyond simple amplification into the fascinating realm of cymatics, the study of how sound influences matter. We now know that specific frequencies can cause sand, water, or other particles to arrange themselves into intricate geometric patterns. The ancient priests, through millennia of empirical observation, may have discovered this principle for themselves. By chanting specific tones and vowels at precise frequencies, they could have been attempting to influence the very energy within the chamber. The idea is that these sonic patterns could stabilize or even structure a field of energy, creating a coherent, harmonic scaffold upon which a portal could temporarily form. The correct sound wouldn't just be a signal, it would be a structuring force using vibration to bring order from chaos, much like the Creator God did in the beginning. The instruments they used were carefully chosen for their unique sonic properties. The most sacred was the sistrum, a ceremonial rattle with metal discs that produced a shimmering, metallic rustle. This was no mere noisemaker. That specific, non-melodic sound is rich in high-frequency overtones, a type of sound known to have a stimulating effect on the human nervous system, potentially inducing slight alterations in consciousness and heightening focus. Paired with the deep, resonant drone of long trumpets or the rhythmic beat of a drum, the priests could generate a complex sonic tapestry. This combination of frequencies, the high, shimmering overtones of the sistrum layered over a fundamental low drone, might have been designed to create a beat frequency, a third, subharmonic tone felt more than heard. This infrasonic frequency could vibrate at a level that resonates with the human brain, promoting a trance-like state ideal for ritual work and making the participants more receptive to the extraordinary experience they were attempting to engineer. Perhaps the most compelling evidence lies in the hieroglyphs themselves. Many researchers believe the Egyptian language was not just a tool for communication, but a system of sacred sound. Each hieroglyphic symbol was believed to hold its own vibrational power, and the act of speaking the true name of a god was tantamount to holding power over that deity. The rituals inscribed on the walls of Luxor are not just instructions, they are precise sequences of sound, a sonic code that must be executed flawlessly. Chanting these names and phrases in the resonant granite chamber, at the correct frequency and with the right intention, can be seen as inputting a password into a cosmic security system. The sound becomes the key that vibrates in harmony with the architecture, the celestial alignment, and the consciousness of the priests, all coming together to momentarily unlock the barrier between dimensions. In this light, their rituals were not superstition. They were a highly sophisticated vibrational technology, using the primal power of sound to attempt the ultimate feat of sacred engineering. This staggering responsibility, the maintenance of a device capable of bridging worlds, could never have been entrusted to the general priesthood or the populace. It demanded an elite coder, a dedicated class of guardians whose entire existence was sworn to the gate's secrecy, protection, and proper operation. If such a technology existed at Luxor, it would have been overseen by a highly specialized priestly order, a secret society within the already secretive temple hierarchy. These wouldn't have been mere soldiers, they would have been the ultimate initiates, masters of both the physical rituals and the spiritual disciplines required to interface with such a power. Their primary role was dual in nature, to serve as the gate's operators during its rare activations and to act as its permanent, unwavering protectors, ensuring its existence remained hidden from those who would misuse it or fail to comprehend its profound danger. The selection process for such an order would have been unimaginably strict, beginning in early childhood. Candidates were likely chosen from the most promising sons of noble or priestly families, selected for their intellectual brilliance, psychic sensitivity, and unwavering loyalty. The training they underwent was a total reconstruction of the self, a decades-long initiation designed to forge a human being into a living key. It was a holistic education that modern minds would struggle to categorize, blending advanced mathematics and astronomy with intense metaphysical training. They learned to control their own bioenergy, to enter deep meditative states at will, and to heighten their perception to sense the subtle energy fluctuations of the gate itself. Their physical bodies were hardened through discipline and diet to become pure vessels, capable of withstanding the immense energetic pressures that might emanate from an active portal. This was not just an education, it was an alchemical process transforming a boy into a guardian, a human being into a functioning component of the most sacred technology on Earth. The culmination of this training was almost certainly a symbolic death and rebirth ceremony, a ritual trope found in mystery traditions across the ancient world. The initiate would be led into the deepest, most lightless subterranean chamber beneath Luxor. There, through a combination of sensory deprivation, guided meditation, and potentially even psychoactive substances, they would undergo a profound visionary experience. They would confront their own mortality and the terrifying vastness of the cosmos, facing symbolic tests and entities that guarded the threshold. To pass was to symbolically die to their old, mundane self and be reborn as a new being, an effective spirit, now equipped with the knowledge and spiritual authority to stand before the gateway without being annihilated by its power. This rebirth granted them their true name, a secret vibrational key that identified them to the system and to their fellow guardians. This knowledge, so dangerous and potent, could not be allowed to vanish. It was preserved through an unbroken chain of oral tradition, passed directly from master to apprentice in the seclusion of the underground chambers. Written records, if they existed at all, would have been in an extremely cryptic form, a symbolic language within a language embedded within the more common hieroglyphic texts on public temple walls. The true meanings of the rituals, the activation codes, and the emergency shutdown procedures were never entrusted to papyrus or stone that could be plundered or decayed. They were encoded in songs, in specific choreographies of movement, and in the precise architectural proportions of the temple itself, creating a living library that could only be read by those who had been taught how to see. The question that then haunts us is what became of this order. With the decline of the New Kingdom, the rise of foreign rulers, and the eventual suppression of the ancient Egyptian religion, the great temples like Luxor were abandoned or repurposed. The state support and the vibrant spiritual ecosystem that sustained the guardians vanished, but it is unlikely such a resilient and secretive order would simply disappear. They would have gone further underground, literally and figuratively, sealing the deepest chambers and dispersing into the population. Their knowledge would have fragmented, transforming from a complete scientific spiritual discipline into the core tenets of various underground Gnostic sects, mystical Jewish traditions like the Merkaba, and later, the esoteric schools of the Hermeticists and alchemists during the Renaissance. The symbols changed, the languages evolved, but the core idea of a hidden gateway to divine realms and the initiated few who guard its secret persisted. This leads to the tantalizing possibility that a lineage of this knowledge survives even today. Modern secret societies and esoteric orders, from the Freemasons to the Rosicrucians, all possess initiation rites that eerily echo the symbolic death and rebirth of the ancient mysteries. Their rituals are filled with architectural symbolism, references to lost wisdom, and a reverence for the power of sound and geometry. While they may not possess the full technical manual for a Stargate, they may be the inheritors of the philosophical and spiritual framework that surrounded it: the moral duty of the guardian, the necessity of secrecy, and the slow, patient preparation of human consciousness for a time when such wonders might again be understood. The true protectors of the gate may no longer be a group of priests in a specific location, but a scattered fellowship of initiates across the globe who keep the embers of this ancient knowledge alive, waiting for the day when the world is once again ready for the truth slumbering beneath the sands. While the historical accounts and architectural mysteries are compelling, the true test of any theory lies in the hard evidence being uncovered today by trowel and technology. Modern archaeology, with its ground-penetrating radar and meticulous excavation, is slowly peeling back the layers of sand and time around Luxor, revealing a hidden world that is both confirming and confounding our understanding of this sacred site. These aren't the sensationalized discoveries of pulp novels, but the quiet, painstaking work that is adding tangible data points to this ancient mystery. One of the most significant recent finds came in 2019, when Egyptian authorities announced the discovery of an unprecedented industrial-scale workshop on the west bank of Luxor in the Valley of the Monkeys. This was not a tomb for a king, but a massive, organized production facility dedicated to crafting the most sacred items for the afterlife. 30 workshops for building coffins and one for creating exquisite funerary masks from precious metals and stones. This discovery fundamentally shifts our perception. It reveals a highly organized, state-sponsored operation for producing magical technology, suggesting that the belief in equipping the soul for its journey through the Duat was not just a spiritual idea but a driving economic and industrial force. If such immense resources were dedicated to preparing the dead for interdimensional travel, what might they have built for the living in the heart of their most powerful temple? Even more tantalizing are the persistent rumors and preliminary data pointing to vast, unexplored subterranean networks. For years, researchers like Dr. Zahi Hawass have spoken of their belief in undiscovered chambers beneath the sands of the Valley of the Kings, but the focus is now shifting to the temple complexes themselves. Non-invasive surveys around Luxor and Karnak continue to identify deep, anomalous voids that defy simple explanation. These aren't just empty spaces, their geometric shapes and alignment suggest deliberate construction. Egyptologist Dr. Kara Cooney, while cautious, has publicly speculated that these subterranean areas were likely used for everything from secret rituals to the safeguarding of sacred knowledge, far from the public eye. Each new scan adds another piece to the puzzle, painting a picture of a temple whose visible grandeur is merely the surface layer of a much deeper, hidden infrastructure. The artifacts emerging from the sand are equally provocative. In recent years, excavations have uncovered sophisticated tools and objects that challenge our view of Bronze Age technology. We've found finely crafted copper saws with diamond-hard cutting edges, drill cores from granite that show a consistent, advanced drilling technique with immense pressure and precision, and intricate inlay work that would be difficult to achieve even with modern tools. While mainstream archaeology attributes this to incredible skill and patience, other researchers see potential evidence for a lost or more advanced methodology. The late engineer Christopher Dunn, in his book The Giza Power Plant, meticulously documented tool marks on Egyptian stone that he argued were consistent with machinery, not hand tools. These are not claims of alien intervention, but of a human ingenuity that we may have profoundly underestimated. The academic community remains deeply divided on how to interpret these findings. The majority stance, championed by esteemed institutions, is one of cautious interpretation. For every anomalous tool mark, they point to experimental archaeology that has successfully recreated similar effects using period-appropriate tools and techniques. They argue that the subterranean voids are most likely natural fissures, flooded Nile channels, or simple storage magazines that have been romanticized by modern speculation. Their view is that while the ancient Egyptians were master architects and deeply spiritual people, projecting our science fiction fantasies onto them does a disservice to their very real and magnificent achievements. However, a growing number of voices on the fringe of Egyptology are urging a broader consideration. Researchers like author and investigator Andrew Collins point to the sheer consistency of the global pattern. the focus on specific materials, celestial alignments, and subterranean construction from Egypt to Peru, and argue it suggests a shared ancient wisdom. Their perspective is not that every myth is literal truth, but that we should be open to the possibility that these cultures were describing a sophisticated understanding of natural forces and consciousness that we are only now beginning to rediscover through quantum physics and the study of vibrational energy. For them, the Stargate is a modern metaphor for an ancient technology of consciousness, and the archaeological evidence, from the precision of the stones to the whispers of hidden chambers, is the physical footprint of that forgotten science. The conversation between these two camps is not a battle between fact and fiction, but a vital debate about the boundaries of ancient human potential, a debate that is being fueled with every new discovery that emerges from the timeless sands of Luxor. Yet for all the compelling connections and tantalizing theories, we must also give voice to the skeptics, to the mainstream academic perspective that views the Stargate hypothesis as a modern projection onto an ancient world. The prevailing view within Egyptology is one of profound respect for the ancient Egyptians' achievements, but it firmly grounds those achievements in a context of symbolic religious practice, not interdimensional engineering. The primary counterargument is a straightforward one: a complete and utter lack of direct physical evidence. No mechanism, no energy coils, no crystalline power cores, or any other tangible component of a portal device has ever been unearthed at Luxor or any other site. For these scholars, the absence of such evidence is not a mystery to be solved, but the definitive answer itself. They argue that if such a sophisticated technology existed, even if later dismantled or hidden, the archaeological record would contain some trace, a unique alloy, tool marks inconsistent with the era, or writings that clearly describe machinery, not just metaphor. Instead, what we find are chisels, stone hammers, and texts filled with spiritual allegory. Mainstream interpreters point to the vast body of Egyptian religious texts, which they argue have been misread through a science fiction lens. The scenes of the pharaoh receiving life from the gods are not recordings of a physical event, but powerful statements of divine legitimacy and royal ideology. The goal was not to open a literal doorway, but to maintain cosmic order or mat through correct ritual practice. The temple was a machine for the mind and the soul, not for physical travel. Its precise alignment served as a magnificent clock and calendar, reinforcing the pharaoh's role as the intermediary who ensured the sun would rise and the Nile would flood through his pious actions. In this view, the true brilliance of Luxor lies in its psychological and political power, its ability to awe its inhabitants and reinforce a social hierarchy centered on a god-king, all achieved through architecture and ceremony, not advanced physics. Furthermore, skeptics challenge the interpretation of the priesthood's knowledge. While acknowledging their sophisticated understanding of astronomy and mathematics, they see this as a development entirely within the realm of a Bronze Age civilization. The precision of their stonework is a testament to incredible patience and generations of accumulated craft knowledge, not lost technology. The tight joints between blocks were a practical necessity for stability in a region prone to earthquakes, and the celestial alignments were achieved through simple but brilliant methods like the simultaneous observation of stars from two distant points. The idea of a global network of power nodes is dismissed as a form of pattern recognition, where the human mind, seeking connection, draws lines between disparate sites that were built millennia apart by cultures with no contact. The similarities in their focus on astronomy and sacred geography are attributed to the universal human response to the sky above and the earth below, not a shared, forgotten technical manual. This perspective urges caution against what it sees as a form of intellectual colonialism, the imposition of our technologically obsessed world view onto a culture whose genius was expressed in a completely different language, that of symbol, spirit, and myth. To claim that the ancient Egyptians needed a Stargate to achieve their spiritual goals, the argument goes, is to diminish their actual accomplishment. It implies that their profound and complex belief system, which sustained a civilization for 3,000 years, was merely a superficial cover story for a piece of hardware. The mainstream view concludes that the real wonder of Luxor is not a hypothetical portal, but the breathtaking fact that a human society without iron or the wheel could conceive and execute such a monumental vision of stone, aligning it with the heavens to create a perpetual dialogue between the earth and the sky, all in service of a spiritual vision that continues to captivate the world. Thousands of years later, these ancient stories of cosmic travel find their most powerful expression in the mythology surrounding Osiris, the god of the afterlife, resurrection, and the underworld. His narrative is far more than a simple tale of betrayal and revenge. It is a complex allegory for cyclical death and rebirth that enthusiasts see as a direct parallel to the operation of a dimensional portal. After being murdered and dismembered by his brother Set, Osiris's wife Isis famously gathered his scattered parts and used her profound magical knowledge to temporarily reassemble him, enough to conceive their son Horus. But this reassembly was not a true, permanent resurrection. Osiris's ultimate fate was to become the lord and judge of the Duat, the ruler of a realm that exists beyond the veil of death. Crucially, he did not simply vanish into this afterlife. He underwent a transformation that allowed him to travel between the world of the living and the world of the dead, presiding over the souls of the deceased while occasionally communicating with or appearing to the living through specific rituals and in dream visions. This ability to move between two distinct states of being, dismembered and whole, dead and alive, in the earthly realm and the underworld, is interpreted by Stargate theorists as a profound metaphor for interdimensional transit. Osiris himself becomes the first and ultimate traveler, a being who has unlocked the secret to moving through the cosmic interface, and the rituals dedicated to him were the ancient attempts to understand and perhaps replicate that journey. The vessel for this cosmic travel is central to another pivotal myth, the bark of millions of years, the magnificent solar barge used by the sun god Ra for his perilous daily journey across the sky and through the 12 hours of the night in the Duat. This is not a simple boat on a river. It is described in texts as a radiant, celestial vehicle crewed by a host of other deities, each performing a specific function to protect Ra and ensure the bark's safe passage. Each hour of the night presents a new challenge: lakes of fire, hostile serpent demons like the great beast Apep, and gateways guarded by deities who must be appeased with the correct words to allow entry. The entire voyage is a meticulously detailed route through a non-terrestrial landscape, a map of a parallel dimension that must be navigated with precision and power. For those who support the Stargate theory, this bark is not a mythological fancy but a detailed description of a vehicle, or perhaps the stable wormhole itself capable of traversing the dangerous space between dimensions. The crew of gods represent the various systems required to operate and stabilize such a portal: defense, navigation, energy management, and communication. The incantations spoken at each gate are the access codes or frequency adjustments needed to safely move from one sector of the cosmic network to the next without being torn apart by the unstable forces at the edges of reality. This interpretation is powerfully reinforced by the sheer number of Egyptian texts that focus on providing the deceased with the precise knowledge to replicate this journey for their own souls. The coffin texts and the Book of the Dead are essentially guidebooks for the afterlife, filled with spells that serve as explicit instructions for navigating the dangers of the Duat. One spell might provide the true name of a ferocious gatekeeper demon, allowing the soul to pass unharmed. Another gives the formula for not having your heart eaten by the monster Ammit. These are not vague spiritual affirmations, they are specific procedural commands. Do not recognize me, a spell might demand of a hostile entity, or I know you, I know your name. Of a helpful one, This practical, almost technical approach to the afterlife journey suggests the ancient Egyptians viewed the process not as a passive surrender to fate, but as an active, navigable voyage that required the correct operational data. The parallelism to inputting coordinates into a Stargate or using a password to bypass security is striking. The mythology provided the map and the rituals provided the keys to the vehicle. Ultimately, these myths were not mere stories to entertain or comfort. They were the foundational blueprints and safety manuals for the priesthood's most ambitious work. The tale of Osiris established the precedent that travel between worlds was possible, even for a being who had undergone dissolution. The Epic of the Solar Bark provided a detailed, hour-by-hour log of what to expect during the journey and the precise protocols for overcoming its challenges. For the high priests of Luxor, these narratives were not allegory. They were historical records and technical schematics passed down from a time when the gods walked the earth. Their monumental project to build a stable gateway can be seen as the ultimate act of devotion, an attempt to reverse engineer the divine technology used by Ra and Osiris to construct a permanent bark of millions of years anchored in the heart of their temple, and to give humanity direct access to the pathways of the gods. The mythology was their inspiration, their instruction manual, and their eternal reminder that the boundaries between worlds were not walls, but doors waiting for those who possessed the knowledge to turn the key. This profound connection between the spiritual and the physical journey finds its ultimate expression in the ancient Egyptian concept of the afterlife, a perilous voyage through a series of gates and realms that every soul was believed to undertake. For the common person, this was a path navigated in the spirit after death, guided by spells from the Book of the Dead to safely bypass demonic guardians and reach the field of reeds. But for the priestly elite operating within the hidden chambers of Luxor, this spiritual map may have served as far more than a religious belief. It could have been the literal blueprint for a physical apparatus. The various gates described in the coffin texts, each with its own fearsome guardian demanding a specific password or true name, might not have been mere metaphors. They could represent a precise sequence of energy fields or frequency barriers that needed to be stabilized and neutralized in order within the temple's architecture to safely open a stable corridor. The priests, through their rituals, weren't just praying for a safe journey. They were executing a meticulous activation protocol, using their knowledge of Heka to command the very forces that guarded the boundaries between dimensions. This idea transforms our understanding of their ambition. The Stargate wasn't necessarily about projecting a physical body to a distant planet in our universe. Its purpose may have been far more profound, to achieve what every Egyptian sought in death but to accomplish it in life. For a high-ranking initiate, stepping into the activated gateway could have been the ultimate ritual of spiritual transformation, a temporary, controlled death of the earthly self that allowed their consciousness to traverse the Duat and return, having achieved the status of an Ak or effective spirit, while still inhabiting their physical form. This wasn't about escaping the world, but about achieving a godlike state of being within it, granting them unparalleled wisdom, authority, and a direct connection to the cosmic order. The gateway would have been the ultimate tool of enlightenment, a machine designed to force an evolutionary leap in human consciousness by allowing a living person to safely experience the afterlife journey and return empowered. The sheer danger associated with this process cannot be overstated. The ancient texts are filled with warnings of the perils awaiting the unprepared soul, lakes of fire, soul eaters, and obliteration for those who failed the weighing of the heart ceremony. If these were not just spiritual warnings but descriptions of very real, energetic hazards within an interdimensional corridor, it explains the immense secrecy and the decades of rigorous training required for the priesthood. A single mispronounced word, an error in the celestial timing, or an impure thought from the operator could have meant not just ritual failure, but catastrophic decompression of the portal, potentially unleashing unimaginable forces or even hostile entities into our reality. The guardians depicted on the temple walls weren't just mythological art, they were constant reminders of the protocols that had to be followed with absolute perfection. The safety of the entire civilization may have depended on the flawless execution of these rites by a handful of impeccably trained individuals. This perspective allows us to see the temples of Luxor and Karnak not as separate entities, but as components of a unified system for managing this incredible power. Karnak, as the cult center of Amun-Ra, the hidden source of creation, could have acted as the primary energy generator, the power plant for the entire operation. The 2-mile-long avenue of sphinxes connecting it to Luxor then becomes a heavily insulated energy conduit, channeling that raw creative power to the more secluded Luxor Temple, which served as the control room and launch site. This division of labor makes perfect sense. Keep the volatile, dangerous activation sequence far from the public eye and the primary energy source, contained within a secure, sanctified location designed specifically for the task. The entire sacred landscape of Thebes emerges as a colossal machine, with each temple playing a specific role in the grand and terrifying project of bridging the world of the living with the realm of the gods. Of course, the staggering scale of Egyptian achievements inevitably leads to a compelling and controversial question. Could the priests of Luxor have accomplished all this entirely on their own? This line of inquiry brings us directly to the realm of ancient astronaut theory, a provocative framework suggesting that humanity's earliest and most magnificent architectural wonders were not purely human inventions, but were instead built with the guidance or even direct intervention of extraterrestrial visitors. Proponents of this view argue that the technological leap required to conceive and construct something as advanced as a Stargate is simply too great to attribute to a Bronze Age culture, no matter how brilliant. They point to what they see as anachronistic knowledge embedded in myth and stone, proposing that beings from another world provided the blueprint, acting as divine instructors to a fledgling human civilization. The core of this argument often hinges on interpreting Egyptian mythology not as symbolic stories, but as literal, if simplified, records of contact. The gods themselves, beings like Ra, who traversed the sky in a solar bark, or Thoth, the ibis-headed deity who bestowed writing, mathematics, and all sciences upon humanity, are reimagined not as mystical entities but as advanced extraterrestrial explorers. Their fantastical depictions with animal heads and otherworldly attributes could be explained as a primitive culture's attempt to describe the sophisticated suits, helmets, and technology of their alien visitors. In this light, the sacred knowledge guarded by the priesthood was not developed through slow, human trial and error, but was a transferred technology, a gift from the stars intended to accelerate human development. The Stargate, then, becomes not an Egyptian invention, but a piece of installed alien technology, maintained by a priestly class taught to operate it, much like an ancient civilization being taught to use a computer without understanding the underlying physics of the microprocessor. Luxor is frequently compared to other global megalithic sites that share its aura of mystery. The mind-boggling precision of the stones at Puma Punku in Bolivia, cut with laser-like accuracy and interlocking with impossible complexity, is often cited as another candidate for non-human construction. The massive, multi-ton foundations of Baalbek in Lebanon, featuring the largest cut stone in the world, present a similar logistical puzzle. Ancient astronaut theorists see a pattern, a collection of sites across the globe, built with a shared, inexplicable level of stone-working prowess, all appearing around the same general epoch in human history. This, they argue, suggests a coordinated effort, a kind of global architectural project undertaken by or under the direction of a single, advanced non-human intelligence, with Luxor serving as a key node in this planetary network. However, it is absolutely crucial to maintain a critical and balanced perspective when examining these claims. The mainstream scientific community overwhelmingly rejects ancient astronaut theories, and for compelling reasons. The primary counterargument is a profound respect for human ingenuity. This perspective holds that attributing these wonders to aliens is not just a leap of logic, but a form of intellectual injustice that robs ancient cultures of their full credit. It implies that our ancestors were incapable of such genius on their own, a notion that many archaeologists find not only unsupported by evidence but also borderline condescending. They argue that the gradual progression of Egyptian technology is clearly visible in the archaeological record, from crude early attempts to the pinnacle of their engineering at Giza and Luxor, demonstrating a clear human learning curve. Furthermore, the evidence cited by ancient astronaut theorists is often challenged on methodological grounds. The so-called unexplainable precision of the stonework has been repeatedly replicated by modern craftsmen using only period-appropriate tools and techniques, proving it was within human capability, even if it required immense skill and patience. The interpretations of mythology are also highly subjective. Taking a rich, symbolic narrative tradition and reading it as a literal technical manual is a classic case of confirmation bias, where one sees what one wants to see. The absence of any physical evidence for extraterrestrial presence, no unique alloys, no advanced tools left behind, no unequivocal biological remains the most significant hole in the theory. Ultimately, whether one finds the ancient astronaut hypothesis compelling or fanciful, it serves a valuable purpose. It pushes us to look at these magnificent ruins with fresh eyes and forces us to continually question and refine our understanding of humanity's ancient past, a past that may hold surprises we have yet to fully comprehend. If the high priests of Luxor did indeed guard such a profound secret, its influence would not have simply vanished with the decline of their civilization. Instead, this potent knowledge likely fragmented and went underground, flowing like a hidden river through history, surfacing in the philosophies of later cultures that came into contact with Egypt's enduring mysteries. The first major conduit for this transmission was ancient Greece, a civilization utterly captivated by Egyptian wisdom. Pioneering Greek thinkers like Pythagoras and Plato are both recorded as having spent significant time studying at Egyptian temples, and it is here that the theory finds a compelling link. Pythagoras's groundbreaking ideas about sacred geometry, the mathematical ratios that govern harmony in music and the cosmos, echo the precise architectural principles found at Luxor and Karnak. His concept of the universe being built upon number and vibration sounds less like a novel Greek invention and more like a direct inheritance of the priestly understanding that stone and sound could be tuned to cosmic frequencies. Similarly, Plato's famous allegory of the cave, which describes humanity perceiving only shadows of a greater reality, resonates deeply with the Egyptian concept of the Duat, a realm of true forms and powerful forces lying just beyond the veil of ordinary perception. This was not mere coincidence, it was the deliberate importation of a sophisticated cosmological framework, suggesting the Greeks were not just admiring Egyptian monuments, but were actively seeking out the esoteric knowledge those monuments represented. This stream of Egyptian thought did not stop with the classical world. It flowed directly into the rich tradition of Hermeticism, a cornerstone of Western esotericism that explicitly claims its wisdom from the land of the pharaohs. The legendary founder of this movement, Hermes Trismegistus, is a direct fusion of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian deity of wisdom and writing, Thoth. The core Hermetic texts, such as the famous Emerald Tablet, proclaim principles like "as above, so below," a concept that is the very heartbeat of Egyptian sacred architecture. This axiom perfectly describes the intent behind aligning a temple with a specific star or crafting an obelisk to channel celestial energy, the belief that by perfectly mirroring the macrocosm of the heavens in the microcosm of a building, one could harness the forces of creation. The Hermetic arts of alchemy and astrology, often dismissed as primitive superstition, can be reinterpreted through this lens. They were not attempts to literally turn lead into gold, but complex spiritual technologies for personal transformation, using chemical and celestial metaphors to describe the same process of inner purification and consciousness expansion that a high priest might have undergone to operate a Stargate. The ultimate goal of the alchemist was to create the philosopher's stone, a substance that granted enlightenment and immortality, a parallel to the Egyptian quest to create an Ak, an effective spirit capable of traversing the realms of the gods. This legacy of concealed knowledge found its most enduring home within the secret societies that emerged during the European Renaissance and Enlightenment, most notably Freemasonry. To walk into a Masonic lodge is to step into a sanctuary saturated with Egyptian symbolism. The signature square and compass tools of the stonemason are more than just architectural instruments. They are symbolic representations of the same principles of sacred geometry and precise measurement that allowed the priests to align their temples with such breathtaking accuracy. The checkerboard floor, a staple of Masonic imagery, mirrors the alternating pattern of light and shadow that would have played across the floors of Egyptian temples during solstice events, representing the duality and balance of cosmic forces. Most significantly, the entire Masonic initiation process is built upon a dramatic narrative of death and rebirth, the building of a symbolic temple, and the pursuit of lost sacred knowledge. These rituals are starkly reminiscent of the purported initiation a candidate would have endured in the subterranean chambers beneath Luxor, symbolically dying to their old self to be reborn as a guardian of a great secret. For Freemasons, the grand architect of the universe is not an abstract concept but a divine geometrician, and their fraternity is the modern custodian of the ancient art of building both physical structures and the spiritual temple within oneself. The impact of this presumed Egyptian wisdom extends far beyond a single organization, seeding countless esoteric movements that have shaped Western thought. The Rosicrucians, with their emblem of a rose on a cross, spoke of hidden wisdom and spiritual transformation, drawing heavily on Hermetic and alleged Egyptian sources. Even the 19th century spiritualist movement and the founding of the Theosophical Society by Helena Blavatsky looked back to Egypt as a primary fount of ancient occult knowledge, a place where the boundaries between the material and spiritual worlds were thin and navigable. The persistent allure of Egyptology within these groups is not simply an obsession with the past. It is a continued belief that the priests of Luxor achieved a synthesis of science and spirit that modern humanity has since lost. They are not seeking to find a physical Stargate buried in the sand, but to reconstruct the philosophical and spiritual framework that made its operation possible, the understanding of vibration, energy, and consciousness that would allow a human being to once again interact with the fundamental architecture of reality. The legacy of the priests is not a dusty relic, but a living current of thought, a perpetual invitation to look beyond the visible and consider that our ancestors may have mastered a science of the soul that we are only now, in our age of quantum physics and multidimensional theory, beginning to rediscover. But if this gateway was real and its construction demanded such immense resources and knowledge, why does it remain hidden from us today? Why haven't modern archaeologists, with their ground-penetrating radar and satellite imaging, simply uncovered its entrance and settled the debate once and for all? The answer is as complex as the priests who built it, pointing toward a confluence of deliberate protection, the unforgiving passage of time, and the very nature of the technology itself. First, we must consider the powerful likelihood of intentional, strategic concealment. The priesthood understood the catastrophic danger of such a device falling into the wrong hands. Imagine the consequences if a conquering army, a power-hungry pharaoh from a rival dynasty, or simply an unprepared novice were to stumble upon the activation chamber. A single misstep could have unleashed forces capable of unraveling reality itself or allowing unimaginable entities to cross into our world. Therefore, the final, most sacred duty of the Guardian Order would not have been operation but permanent closure. As their civilization began to crumble under foreign invasion and internal decay, their last act would have been a calculated and irreversible act of sabotage. They wouldn't have just locked a door, they would have engineered a collapse. Using their profound knowledge of the temple's structural weaknesses, they could have triggered controlled cave-ins, flooding key tunnels with sand or water from the Nile, and sealing the deepest chambers behind not one, but multiple cascading barriers of rubble and stone. The entrance wasn't just hidden, it was systematically annihilated from the architectural record, its very existence scrubbed from the knowledge of all but the most senior initiates, who took the final secrets with them to their graves. Beyond human intervention, the relentless hand of nature has spent millennia burying the truth. The very geography of Luxor makes it a prime target for silting and sand deposition from the annual flooding of the Nile. Over centuries, this process could have added dozens of feet of alluvial soil atop the original temple foundations, effectively creating a new ground level and entombing the lowest layers in a perfect sterile seal. Major seismic events, while rare, have also rocked the region throughout history. A significant earthquake could have triggered catastrophic structural failures in already delicate subterranean spaces, collapsing tunnels and vaults in an instant, forever trapping their contents under thousands of tons of compacted debris. What was once a carefully constructed machine becomes an impenetrable, chaotic tomb, with its components scattered and crushed beyond recognition. Modern excavations often stop at the floors of the known temples, rarely probing dozens of meters deeper into this unstable, waterlogged, and incredibly dangerous substrate, leaving the most promising secrets forever out of reach. Perhaps the most intriguing possibility is that the Stargate was never a physical object to be found in the conventional sense. What if the entire temple complex, its alignments, its resonating chambers, its obelisks was merely the support structure for a phenomenon that was temporal and energetic, not static and metallic? The key to its operation may not have been a lever to pull, but a specific set of conditions to meet. A precise celestial alignment, a specific harmonic frequency generated by chant and instrument, and a critical mass of focused human consciousness achieved through ritual. Without this exact combination of elements, the portal would simply not manifest. In this scenario, the Stargate is not a dormant ring waiting in a dark room. It is a potentiality, a temporary rift that flickers into existence only when the cosmic lock is turned by all the right keys simultaneously. We could be standing in the very chamber where it once appeared, scanning the walls with the most advanced equipment, and find nothing because we lack the crucial, non-physical component of the equation, the ancient science of activating consciousness itself. The greatest secret of Luxor may not be a hidden door, but a forgotten password to the universe, one that we have not yet learned how to speak. So as the sun sets over the columns of Luxor, casting long shadows where priests once walked, we're left to weigh an incredible possibility against the steady voice of conventional history. We've journeyed through the hidden world of the Egyptian priesthood, a class of brilliant scholar-scientists who saw no division between the laws of the physical universe and the principles of the spirit. We've stood in the temple's heart, tracing the precise celestial alignments and the deep subterranean chambers that suggest a purpose far beyond simple worship. We've decoded the mythology that served as their blueprint, where tales of solar barks and doors to the heavens read less like fables and more like technical manuals for navigating the cosmos. And we've seen how every element, from the resonant obelisks to the vibrational rituals, fits together into a cohesive, if startling, theory that this was a machine for transcending the very limits of our world. The true magic of this mystery is that it may never be definitively solved, and perhaps that's the point. It lives in that captivating space between the known and the unknown, the measurable and the mythical. It challenges us to expand our definition of technology to include the power of consciousness, and to consider that the greatest achievements of an ancient civilization might not be the stones they left behind, but the knowledge they took with them. Whether you see the priests of Luxor as divine magicians, interdimensional engineers, or simply brilliant ritualists who mastered the art of human belief, their legacy is a powerful reminder that our ancestors looked at the stars not just with wonder, but with an intent to reach them. Now we turn the question over to you. What do you believe lies beneath the sands of Luxor? Are these stories symbolic myths, or could they be echoes of a lost science we are only beginning to understand? Share your own theories and perspectives in the comments below. These conversations are where the best discoveries are often made. If you're captivated by the boundaries of ancient knowledge, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell for our next journey into the world's greatest enigmas. Until then, keep looking up and wondering what else is waiting to be found.